What did they tell you when you cried? Stop crying. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. Nobody wants to hear that. Be strong. Pull yourself together. You do not have time for all that right now. And so you did. You pulled yourself together. You stopped crying. You swallowed it. You kept moving because that was what was required of you. That was what kept the peace. That was what made you acceptable in the spaces you needed to belong to. Because here is what nobody told you about all those feelings you swallowed. It did not disappear. They went somewhere. And today we're going to talk about where they went and what's it costing you that you're still there. So welcome back to the Empowerment Click. I'm Kenya Tam, empowerment coach, clinician, your people's social worker. We are continuing the wound series today, where I'm putting a series of videos together. And this series is about naming the patterns that live underneath the surface of women's lives. The one that developed quietly over time through experiences that taught us something about who we were allowed to be and how we were allowed to show up in the world. Today, we are talking about emotional suppression. And I want to start by acknowledging something before we go any further in this topic. The topic is personal for a lot of women in a way that is hard to articulate because we are talking about the very thing that makes us human and our ability to feel, and the way that ability has been systematically shut down in women for generations. This is not just an individual story. This is a cultural story, a generational story. And it is time we told it honestly. So take a sit with me, grab your journal, something to drink. Let's get right into it. Emotional suppression is actually what it sounds like. It's a habitual, often unconscious practice of pushing down, denying, minimizing, or disconnecting from your own emotional experience. It is the pattern that develops when a person learns through repeated experiences that their feelings are not welcome, that expressing emotion leads to consequences, that grown people don't cry and get emotional, that being emotionally visible is dangerous, inconvenient, or simply not allowed. And for women, especially women of color, especially Black women, especially suppressed women, emotional suppression has been both culturally and enforced and personally learned in ways that run extraordinarily deep. We were raised inside a narrative that said women, strong women, do not fall apart. Strong women keep moving. Strong women handle it. And so we handled it. We handled everything. And we felt nothing. Or at least we were told ourselves we felt nothing. Because the truth and the feelings were always there. We just got very good at not showing them. And eventually very good at not even letting ourselves fully experience them. I want to talk about legacy, the legacy pillar for a minute. Here is where the legacy piece sometimes become impossible to ignore. Emotional suppression is almost never something a woman invented on her own. It was modeled, inherited. She watched women before her swallow their pain and keep moving. She learned that this was what strength looked like. She watched her mother not cry. She watched her grandmother not break. She absorbed the unspoken rule: we did not fall apart in this family. We do not show weakness. We do not give people that kind of satisfaction. And she carried that rule forward in her own life, even stopping to ask nothing, because whether it was actually serving her or not, because it was never presented as a choice. It was presented as just the way things were. Just who are we? Just how we do things. Boy. But I need to be really clear about something here. I'm going to say from a clinical standpoint, just briefly, emotional suppression is not strength. Okay? I want to really dwell on that for a minute. It is a coping mechanism. And like all coping mechanisms, it serves a purpose at some point. If we grow up in an environment where showing your feelings lead to ridicule, punishment, or abandonment, suppressing them was a smart thing to do. It was adaptive. It kept you safe. But coping mechanisms that were brilliant in childhood become burdens in adulthood because you are no longer in that environment. And you have the capacity to make different choices. But nervous system did not get that memo. It's still running that old program, still shutting down things before you can even surface. still protecting you from a threat they may no longer exist. Here is what emotional suppression looks like in real life, because I want you to see this clearly. It looks like something hard happening and your first response being to immediately figure out what needs to be done rather than allowing yourself to feel to feel it. So it looks like someone asking you, how are you? And your answer always been fine or busy or good, because the real answer feels too complicated or too vulnerable to say out loud. It looks like watching something that should move you, like a movie, a piece of music, a moment in someone else's life, and a feeling of a strange numbness where emotion should be. It looks like not being able to cry even when you desperately need to, or crying suddenly and unexpectedly over something small and not understanding why, because all the big things you did not let you feel, having been building up pressure for so long that they finally found a crack, and it looks like anxiety that seems to come from nowhere. Body is tense and braced even when nothing is wrong. It's like exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you slept. Like a vague and persistent sense that something is off and that you are not fully present in your own life without being able to name exactly what is missing. What people do not always realize is that suppression emotion do not just disappear. The body keeps the score. That is not just a book title. It is a clinical reality. When we consistently override our emotional experiences, the body absorbs what the mind refused to process. Chronic tension, headaches, digestive system, autoimmune responses, sleep disruption. The body will find a way to speak what the mouth has been forbidden to say. And it will keep speaking louder and louder until someone pays attention. And it may not even be you. I think about a woman I worked with who came to me not because she thought she had an emotional issue, but because she felt exhausted and could not figure out why. She was sleeping, she was eating. Nothing in her life was totally wrong from outside perspectives might looking past you, but she felt very hollow. And when we started to actually look at what was happening, she emotionally realized that she has not been genuinely yelling and screaming and crying in years, had not allowed herself to be angry and frustrated and worrisome in years, had not admitted to being scared or hurt in years. She's been functioning on a completely flattened emotional landscape, not because she did not have feelings, but because she hadn't become so skilled at suppressing them that she had lost access to them entirely. And that disconnection from her own emotional life was showing up in her body as a bone deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep could touch. Does that sound familiar? This is what long-term emotional suppression does. It does not just make you numb, it cuts you off from the very signals that tell you who you are, what you need, that you matter, what your limits are when something is wrong. Emotion are not just feelings. They are information. They are the language for your inner life uses to communicate with you. And when you shut that language down, you lose access to yourself in ways that go far deeper than most people realize. So what does healing from emotional suppression actually looks like? Because this is always the most important part of any conversation we have in this space. It starts with permission. The most fundamental thing a woman who has suppressed her emotions for years needs is permission to feel, not to perform or manufacture her feelings. She does not have those because she stopped interrupting the ones that were genuinely there. She let something land instead of immediately moving away from it. So to sit with discomfort long enough to actually hear what it's saying instead of imagining the silence, that's a step towards. It continues with creating spaces and containers for emotional expression. Journaling, therapy, honest conversations with people who actually trust you or you trust them. Moments and movement because the body holds so much emotion and sometimes the only way to release it is to store it there so to move it out physically. Crying when you need to cry without immediately apologizing for it or shutting down. say I'm angry or I'm hurt or I'm frustrated. I am scared out loud to yourself, even if you cannot say it to anyone else yet. Those are really small things that are the beginning of a woman coming back into a relationship with her own inner life. And it requires patience, you know, because emotional suppression that has been over decades just doesn't dissolve overnight. There will be moments when you feelings of service that are bigger and more overwhelming when you are expected because they have been waiting for a long time to come out. This is not just you falling apart. This is finally allowing the backlog to move through. It is very healthy. It is very necessary. It has evidence that something real is really happening. You are not built to be a numb person, Queen. You were built to be free and fully, deeply, and emotionally, all of the above. The grief and the joy and the rage and the tenderness and the fear and the love. Oh my God, the ranges. Emotional experience is not your weakness. It is your aliveness, and you deserve to have access to all of that. So I leave this with you today. All this information that this spewed out of me for you to come back, listen to this, share this. Jot down things that you have and how you feel, describe how you feel verbatimly, from the emotion of the numbness to if you feel on a standstill. Keep coming back to this series because I'm building it weekly. I am LaKenya. This is the Empowerment Click. Like, subscribe, share. Please check out my description box for anything from my standstill that can wholeheartedly help with this. My free guide as well as my detox guide and my ebook. It's all there to circle around this as you navigate through anything that you're doing, ladies. LaKenya Tam, of course. This is a vibe check. Thanks for listening.